I'm Sherilyn Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 264 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. Stop fixing the wrong things. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back to the show. As we find each other here in mid-November, I wonder what's on your mind. I'll tell you what's been on mine is that it's a reflective time of year. I find as we start to settle into like shorter days and colder temperatures, there's just this cozying in that sort of instinctively kicks off a period of reflection. And I love that about this time of year. It sort of extends for me usually into the winter, where we're spending more time just being able to think. Things slow down just a hair, except for the holidays. And I love that about this particular season. So I hope you're giving yourself some space to be reflective and also being mindful that sometimes that reflective tendency can cause us to beat ourselves up a bit, that we haven't like miraculously fixed everything in our lives by now, right? I think we start to look back at where, what January us thought we were going to tackle this year. And we start wondering why we haven't accomplished all of the things that maybe we said we would in the course of a calendar year. In fact, you might find that there are some like problems or challenges or issues that crop up kind of repetitively in your life. They keep popping up like a game of whack-a-mole or something. And you're sort of repeatedly solving them. So they show up on your list over and over again. Maybe they're resolutions that you're regularly setting, or it's just a nagging sense that you just can't quite get your arms around this thing. And I think sometimes that could be because you're actually fixing, like in air quotes, the wrong thing. And that's what I want to talk about today. Our tendency to fix the wrong things when we're looking at our lives. And there's a few patterns that I see in coaching when someone has a problem that seems to keep presenting itself. Sometimes I hear this on an initial call, like we have an exploratory call that people can schedule. And sometimes even when I'm doing that call, I can really hear the pattern where they've been wrestling with something for a while. And yet there it is, still sort of governing the dynamics of their lives. And sometimes I hear it with our clients, and we have to take a few turns before we really get the problem unlocked. And one of the things that's often at play there is that that person has been essentially solving the wrong side of the problem repeatedly. And so I want to dig into that today with you, because I think when we learn what these patterns are, we can look in our own lives for where might they be showing up. They certainly show up in mine from time to time. And then we can find a better way through, which is really what we're all looking for, is our ability to learn from our patterns and find our way to a better outcome. So 3 things. I'm going to talk about 3 different sort of patterns that I see that can cause us to fix the wrong problem. The first one is when we are fixing symptoms instead of the underlying causes, right? Like we end up looking at the symptoms of a problem and we go after that. So I think a classic example that's probably relatable is if you have a headache and you're like, oh, I feel like I have this headache. Your tendency can be, I'm going to take medicine, right? I'm going to take an Excedrin or a Tylenol or an Advil or whatever. And you can make that headache go away almost always. Like it's not that hard to be able to take some medicine and alleviate the symptoms of a headache. But that will not necessarily address the underlying cause. So the next day you can end up with a headache again, or a couple days later again. And if you don't figure out what's causing these headaches, you can just keep medicating the symptoms. So what if that headache is caused by poor hydration, right? Like you're not, dehydration is a classic cause of headaches. And so if you are underhydrating chronically, you can get headaches that you aren't sure what's causing them, right? You could be undernourished, or you could have the wrong composition of food. I definitely get headaches if I have not enough protein and fat in my diet, right? If I end up with like a sort of carb heavy, sugar heavy, caffeine heavy day, which by the way, think about how often you could be running around on just coffee and maybe something sweet. And that can cause me to get a little spacey and headachy. And if I ground myself with protein or fat in my diet, I can really, and also some extra hydration, I can make that headache go away without any medicine, right? Sleep, classic cause of having headaches, too much stress. Even this one will make you giggle, the pressure point from something in the way you've done your hair. Like if I have a bobby pin somewhere in my hair, if I have it up, or if you're wearing like a hat that's a little too constricting around your temples or a certain pressure point on your head, that can give you a headache. And you might not be looking for those kind of underlying causes. So we can tend to treat the symptoms, we can make the headache go away, but then we repetitively would have the underlying cause. So I think, you think about a runner who has sore knees, and this was definitely me during my marathon years. My knees would be sore just all the time. And I tried everything from knee braces to cortisone shots before races to try to push through that pain. But really, it was the shoes or the way my feet fit into my shoes that caused the alignment problems. They caused alignment problems, which were causing knee pain. And until I got that sorted out with some pretty tricked out orthotics during that era, I wasn't able to run without knee pain, right? So I could have taken ibuprofen until the cows came home. It wouldn't have solved for the underlying cause. And of course, pain is not always physical. Sometimes we keep medicating that pain instead of really stopping to figure out what is causing it so that we can change that. Like you're feeling really overwhelmed by your schedule, really busy. So you go buy a new daily planner or you download a new app instead of editing your commitments, where your time is going, and really curating your schedule and your week so that you can get some ease and some flow back into your schedule, which that would be the underlying cause. But we think, oh, I'm going to solve this by having a really tricked out planner. That's the problem. I haven't found the right one yet, or I haven't found exactly the right app to just keep my arms around what is truly an overscheduled, overcomplicated life. Okay. So that's the first potential pattern that I see, is when we get into this pattern of fixing symptoms instead of fixing the underlying causes of our pain. Another pattern that I see often is fixing to get what we want instead of to get what we need. So here's how this plays out. A coaching topic that will come up is, how do I push through this fatigue, this, brain fog, this exhaustion that I have to get more done? So because I think in Brilliant Balance, we talk a lot about productivity and sort of optimizing the way you get your arms around your life, people will often start off with this desire to say, I need to figure out how to stop procrastinating, get more done, right? Be more productive. And so there's this kind of energy around pushing through that's behind that. But my question back is often, what if you're not supposed to? What if your body and your mind and your spirit are actually screaming for rest? Like they really want to they're begging you to just slow down for a minute and rest. And so I think that is something that we often can tune out and ignore. But we do that at our own peril, because when we tune out and ignore that signal, we're not necessarily getting ourselves into the right long-term solution. So think about this. If you've raised children or even been around children or babysat, if you have a toddler who is having a tantrum, right? They are melting down in the middle of Target. And you have been out running errands and that child is just pushed beyond their limits. Do you say to them, now, depends on how busy you are, I bet, but do we say to them, come on, you can do it. Like, let's just keep going. Or do we say to them, look, you need a nap, right? Or you need a snuggle, or you need some quiet time. Let's get you some rest so you can get a hold again of your ability to be a happy, well-adjusted kind of member of this family. right? That toddler, they're telling you in their own way, I am at the end of my rope, right? Their body is fighting for the ability to get the sleep and the rest that it needs so they can get reset. Sleep is such a powerful reset, right? And often what's in our way when we're feeling that sense of resistance and procrastination and we're moving slowly is some often physical need, candidly, that we're overlooking. So think about maybe you have a teenager who is restricting their food, right? And I hate this, but this pattern is so prevalent even today. I know a lot of us lived through it when we were teenagers, and I don't think this has gotten a whole lot better, right? So you see a teenager who's maybe restricting their food intake in an effort to be a certain size. And their question is like, how do I get myself to eat less? Despite these cravings that I'm having these insane cravings. All I can think about are chocolate chip cookies or chips or whatever. And what do we say to them? Like, hey, you can hold out, right? Let's see how long you can go by fighting those cravings. No, right? I think we would say to them, your body is probably telling you it needs more nutrients. And if you give it the good food that it's really wanting, that has those nutrients, those cravings are going to naturally dissipate. That's how our bodies work. Our bodies give us amplified signals until we give them what they're really asking for. So if our body is saying, hey, I need good food, I am undernourished here, I am not getting the nutrients I need, it doesn't care what it gets, right? It's going to give you a craving for anything that seems like quick calories. But if we give it what it really needs, right, instead of trying to get what we want, which is I want to learn how to not eat and survive, the whole system kind of comes back into balance. So adult women will say, how do I get more done, right? Even when I'm tired, even when my brain is taxed and I'm foggy, right? Well, maybe what you need is to slow down. Maybe what you need is to reassess how much you're taking on. Adult women will say to me, how do I learn to tolerate this really toxic work culture that I'm in this job that I hate so that I can stay? This is maybe not the right question to be asking, but we really do come in sort of trying to get what we want instead of honoring what our whole being is telling us that we need. So when we can make that shift to say, okay, what is my body, my mind, my soul trying to tell me that it needs? And we give it that, it's like things just sort of almost magically shift. The whole thing becomes easier. And the problem that we thought we had sort of melts or morphs into a different thing. And now we have a very different kind of dance that we're doing, right? So when I think about when I got my relationship with food in order and I started honoring what does my body need, those cravings just kind of magically went away. I didn't have a problem anymore called how do I resist these cravings because I didn't have the cravings. Right? Or when your toddler gets the sleep, you're not saying, how do I make them stop this tantrum? Because they aren't tantruming, right? It kind of went away. And that's what we're looking for is if we honor the need, do we actually get what we want, right? In a sort of paradoxical way. So that's the second pattern. Okay, my friends, I have some big news for you today. After years of dreaming about it and saying, how great would it be to have our very own Brilliant Balance boutique, we did it. And the online doors are open. So if you love the podcast and you'd love to start your day with a Brilliant Balance mug or add a little inspo to your office art, or cozy up in a super soft hoodie and a hat for those late to the bus stop mornings, head over to brilliant-balance.com/shop and choose something that will remind you that you are brilliant because you are. And then I want to see all the pictures of you with your new goodies. So tag me on social media at brilliant_balance when it arrives. That's brilliant-balance.com/shop. Go have some fun. And then the third pattern that I see is where we're working so hard to fix the circumstances or change the circumstances instead of changing our perspective. Now, this one is arguably the trickiest because sometimes we don't even realize that we've established a pattern here. So there is something in our world that is really hard for us, and we sort of keep bumping into it over and over again, and we're not really sure why, right? We just know that there's this thing that bugs us all the time. And so we keep trying to change what's around us to make ourselves more comfortable, instead of changing ourselves, right? Instead of looking within and asking, is there something I need to change here around my perspective, right? Around the way I move through the world. So let me give you an example from my life, which is schedule rigidity. For years and years and years of my life, I thought I had to have a very rigid, very predictable schedule in order to feel comfortable. And I tried to get everyone around me to comply with that schedule. And there are some kind of family folklore, like famous examples of this, both with my parents and then later with my husband, and certainly at work, right? Where it was very upsetting to me if something changed in a schedule that I had put together. And I will admit that this is still not the easiest thing in the world for me. I would prefer to have a sense of control and a little bit of a sense of visibility to what my schedule is going to have on it so that I can plan. But eventually I learned that I was actually the one who was like off the curve, right? If you think about standard deviations, I was the one who was off the curve. And I needed to become more tolerant of what were very normal, very run-of-the-mill schedule changes. I essentially needed to become more flexible around how I was going to navigate my time. And so this is really part and parcel of what I teach inside of the Brilliant Balance like weekly planning system, is that it is healthy to have a base plan, right? I call it plan A. And I have one every week. I go into my week with at least a theoretical ideal of what the week is going to look like. And that allows me to do some preparation and clear some space if I need to, and to look for pinch points that might be lurking for me, where I'm double booked or triple booked, or I have to be in two places at once with two different children. And I can sort those things out in advance. But I've also come to just a deep knowing that there's never going to be a perfectly set schedule that doesn't change, right? Unexpected things will happen. And learning to be a little softer, a little gentler about creating space for those changes has really shifted how I feel, right? So that's not a change to the environment around me, because guess what? It was never going to change. The only thing that was going to create a little more ease was shifting my own perspective, the way I thought about the importance of that, right? And that's hard work. So I think this is one that we can resist a lot because we're trying to make everything in our environment work for us. Here's another example. Like if one of your children or your spouse is particularly messy and you are particularly neat and orderly, do you find yourself trying over and over again to get them to change, right? That classic meme about there's a right way to load the dishwasher. Are we really trying to bring everybody in and change those circumstances of how the dishwasher is loaded, or where the socks and shoes get put away, or how the laundry gets done to be our way, right? Or are you working to soften the way you see them, to create some space for what's comfortable for them, the way that they like to move through the world? Are you giving some thought to the idea that your needs, your way of doing this may be a little too strict, right? That would be another example where we're looking to change the circumstances around us instead of shifting our own perspective. And I think another place I see this with our client community is people who really struggle with mornings. Like we have a morning culture, right? This is, I think, especially in America, we have a morning culture of like the early bird catches the worm, right? Get up and be productive. And we have all these morning rituals. And some of them are really excellent, right? I have a morning structure that really helps me kind of get my day off to a good start. But sometimes I'll have someone who is really struggling to make themselves into a morning person. Like everything in them knows that they are not a morning person, right? They just work better as a night owl, but they keep trying to become a morning person, right? They're trying to change the kind of alarm clock they have, or they're trying to change like the first set of activities that they do in the morning, or they're trying to find the perfect morning beverage that kind of eases them into the day. And they're especially trying to master a morning workout. I will tell you that's the number one thing. But when we can get them to think about the perspective that maybe your whole life is meant to be oriented with a really soft, gentle start to your morning. Maybe you need to keep the expectations of yourself pretty low in the morning, and you find this surge of energy later in the day as other people are winding down. Like my kids know in our household, don't talk to me. Don't really ask too much of me after 8 or 9 p.m. because I basically turn into a pumpkin, right? I am worthless after 8 or 9. I need to be winding down and doing very light tasks. Anything after that hour that's strategic or heavy thinking or that really requires me to be firing on all cylinders, it's not going to happen. So, but someone else who is a night owl is going to feel really good at that time of day. That's their best work. So shifting the perspective to say, maybe what I need to do is stop fighting that and really just honor that that is going to help me be in a place of a better flow state is the way through. So this is essentially a journey about acceptance, right? Accepting what is true. And acceptance, I think this is really important, is different than settling. I'm not a big fan of settling, but acceptance is when we stop fighting gravity, right? I call gravity problems is my name for problems that aren't solvable, right? You're not going to make gravity not exist if you're on planet Earth. So the only way through a gravity problem is to honor those, to just accept that some things are not changeable and work around them so that you can change your perspective instead. Otherwise we suffer twice, right? First, we suffer with the event or the circumstance. And then we suffer with our thoughts about it, right? With the fact that we're trying to make it different. So I struggle notoriously with rainy, gray days, right? Some people love gray, rainy days. I do not. So if I am coming off of a stretch of sunny, bright days, I don't care if they're warm or cold, but sunshine really matters. And we head into a day or two of where it's just kind of gray and overcast and maybe a little drizzly. I just don't love it, right? There is a gravity problem there because I have not yet learned how to control the weather. But if I keep wishing it would change, if the whole time it's gray and rainy, I'm like, God, if it would just be sunny today, everything will be so much better. Then I am literally suffering twice, right? First with the actual event and then with this narrative about it. So as soon as I accept that it's raining, and that rain doesn't last forever or gray skies don't last forever, and eventually we will get a sunshine to come out, then my suffering ends because I've settled into that place of acceptance. And none of us are perfect at this. Certainly I am not. I'm still here talking about rainy days and how much I struggle with them, but it really helps to focus on the half of the equation that we can control, which is our perspective, right? When we can't change our circumstances, we can look to change our perspective. Otherwise, every single time we run into this circumstance, we're going to suffer again. So if you find that there are some problems or some issues that keep popping up repeatedly in your life, I want you to think about, are you maybe fixing the wrong problem, right? And we talked about 3 ways this happens. Are you fixing symptoms instead of underlying causes? That's one. Are you fixing to get what you want instead of to get what you need? Are you trying to essentially override your human needs to get something else? Or are you fixing the circumstances to make yourself more comfortable instead of your perspective, right? And sometimes that shows up as changing things around you instead of looking within to change the way you think about them. So these are 3 big ideas to maybe ponder as you go back out into your week. And come join the party in the Facebook group. We have a Facebook group called Brilliant Balance. That's a great place to drop your thoughts about this episode or a place where this pattern is showing up for you. And if you have an idea for a podcast, if you have a topic that you think would be great for this podcast to dig into, drop me a DM. That's a great way to just give me your thoughts. You can find me on Instagram at @cskolnicki, Or you can find Brilliant Balance at brilliant_balance. You can DM either one of those accounts and give me an idea for a podcast episode. And of course, if you loved today's episode and got something out of it, I would love it if you would rate or review the show and or share this episode with a friend. Just find that share button and forward it on to someone who could benefit from what I shared with you today. That's all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.